If you want to make a woman genuinely feel something when she's around you, then you need to understand something most men completely overlook. It's not about saying more, and it's definitely not about trying harder. It's about knowing exactly what to say in a way that actually connects with her on a deeper level. Most men don't realize this. They think attraction is built through effort, through trying to impress, or through constantly talking to keep her attention. But the truth is, the more you speak without intention, the less impact your words actually have. And that's why so many interactions feel forgettable. Think about the kind of compliments most men give. They say things like, "You look nice, you're beautiful," or "I like your outfit." There's nothing wrong with those words, but they don't create any real emotional reaction. She's heard them before, probably many times, and because of that, they don't stand out. They don't make her pause, and they definitely don't make her remember you later. This is where the difference comes in. Attraction is not built on surface level words. It's built on emotional impact. When you say something that touches how she feels, how she sees herself, or how she experiences the world, her entire energy shifts. She becomes more present, more engaged, and more aware of you without even realizing why. That's not luck. That's how psychology works. Most men never learn this, so they stay stuck giving the same basic compliments and getting the same basic reactions. And over time, they become just another person she interacts with. Nothing memorable, nothing different. But when you understand how to speak with intention, everything changes. You don't need to say a lot. You just need to say the right thing at the right moment. And when you do that, your words start to carry weight. In this video, I'm going to show you 8 compliments that go beyond the surface. These are not random lines or things you repeat without thinking. These are specific ways of speaking that create emotion and connection, the kind that makes her feel seen and understood. And once you understand how to use them, you won't just be another guy having a conversation. You'll be the one she remembers after it's over. Now that you understand why most compliments don't work, the next thing you need to see clearly is what actually creates attraction in the first place. Because this is where most men get it wrong. They think attraction is based on external factors, like looks, money, or status. And while those things can get attention, they don't create emotional connection. They don't make a woman feel something real. And without that feeling, attraction doesn't last. What actually makes the difference is much simpler. It's how you make her feel in the moment. When a woman interacts with you, she's not just listening to your words. She's reacting to how those words affect her emotionally. Does she feel understood? Does she feel seen? Does she feel like you notice things about her that most people ignore? That's what creates impact. This is why 2 different men can say completely different things, and one leaves a strong impression while the other is quickly forgotten. It's not just about what is being said. It's about the depth behind it and how it connects to her emotionally. Most men stay at the surface. They give compliments based on what they see. Her appearance, her outfit, something obvious that anyone could notice. And because of that, their words don't stand out. They feel generic, predictable, and easy to ignore. But when you shift your focus from what's obvious to what's meaningful, everything changes. You start noticing how she carries herself, how she interacts with people, the energy she brings into a conversation, the way she expresses herself. And when you speak about those things, your words carry a different kind of weight. That's because you're no longer describing her. You're understanding her. And that's rare. Research in human behavior shows that emotional responses are strongly influenced by how personally relevant something feels. When your words connect to something deeper about her identity or her experience, it creates a stronger reaction because it feels real. This is the difference between being heard and being felt. Most men are heard. Very few are felt. And the ones who are felt are the ones who stand out. So before we get into the specific compliments, you need to understand this foundation, because it's not just about memorizing what to say, it's about changing how you think when you speak. Once you do that, every word you say starts to have more impact. And that's when attraction becomes natural instead of forced. Now that you understand how attraction is actually built, the next thing you need to see clearly is the mistake that keeps most men stuck. And it's simpler than you think. Most men give compliments without intention. They speak just to fill space. They say what comes to mind in the moment without thinking about the impact it creates. And because of that, their words feel empty, even if they sound positive on the surface. This is why you hear the same patterns over and over again. You look good, you're beautiful, you seem nice. Again, there's nothing wrong with these statements, but they don't create anything meaningful. They don't stand out, and they don't make her feel anything deeper than what she's already used to hearing. Over time, those kinds of compliments become background noise. She hears them, but she doesn't feel them. And that's the real problem, because attraction is not built on words that are heard. It's built on words that are felt. Another mistake most men make is focusing only on appearance. They believe that complimenting how she looks is the fastest way to create attraction. But when that's all you focus on, you limit the connection to something surface level. And surface level attention is easy to replace. If 10 different men tell her she looks good, none of them stand out. But the moment someone says something that touches who she is as a person, her mindset, her energy, or how she interacts with the world, that's when things change, because now she feels understood. And that feeling is rare. There's also another layer to this mistake. Many men overdo it. They give too many compliments too quickly, thinking it will increase their chances of being liked. But instead of creating attraction, it creates the opposite effect. It feels forced, and it reduces the value of what they're saying. When everything is a compliment, nothing feels special. That's why intention matters. A well-placed compliment delivered at the right moment, with the right tone, carries more weight than 10 random compliments said without thought. This is what separates a man who is remembered from one who is not. He doesn't speak more, he speaks better. So before you even think about what to say, you need to understand this principle, because once you remove the habit of speaking without intention, everything else becomes easier. And now that you understand the mistake, we can move into the first compliment that actually creates a real emotional reaction. The first compliment is simple, but when used the right way, it creates a strong emotional response. It's about her fragrance. Now, most men don't even notice this, and even when they do, they don't say anything about it. But this is one of the easiest ways to stand out, because it shows something very specific. Awareness. When you say something like that fragrance you're wearing, it's addictive. You're not just talking about how she smells, you're showing that you pay attention to details that most people ignore. And that matters, because attention is one of the strongest forms of attraction. When a woman feels like you notice the small things about her, it creates a different kind of connection. It makes the interaction feel more personal instead of generic. There's also a deeper psychological layer to this. Scent is directly connected to memory and emotion. Certain smells can trigger feelings, memories, and associations instantly. So when you acknowledge her fragrance, you're not just giving a compliment, you're linking yourself to that sensory experience. Over time, that creates association. The next time she smells that same fragrance, there's a chance she remembers the moment, the interaction, and how she felt when you said it. That's how small moments become lasting impressions. But here's the important part. It's not just what you say, it's how you say it. If you overreact, if you say it too loudly or with too much excitement, it loses its impact. It starts to feel forced instead of natural. The key is to keep it calm, controlled, and genuine. Say it like you mean it, not like you're trying to impress her. Another detail that makes this work is timing. You don't say it randomly. You say it when you're close enough for it to feel natural. When the moment is already relaxed and when the interaction has some level of comfort. That's what makes it land. This compliment works because it's different. It's not something she hears all the time, and it connects to something personal without being too direct or overwhelming. And when you do it right, it creates a subtle but powerful shift in how she experiences you. Because now you're not just another guy talking, you're someone she feels. The second compliment focuses on something most men notice, but very few express in the right way: her smile. Now here's the difference. Most men will say something like, "You have a nice smile," and leave it at that. It sounds polite, but it doesn't create any real impact because it stays on the surface. What makes this compliment powerful is not just noticing her smile, but recognizing what it does. When you say something like, "Your smile changes the whole mood around you," you're no longer describing how it looks. You're describing the effect it has. And that shift is what creates the emotional response, because now you're not just observing her, you're experiencing her. This kind of compliment tells her that you're paying attention to how she affects the environment, not just how she appears. And that's rare because most people focus only on what they can see, not what they can feel. There's also a deeper layer to this. A woman's smile is often one of her most natural expressions. It's not forced. It's not something she has to think about. It just happens when she feels comfortable or happy. So when you acknowledge it in a meaningful way, you're connecting with something authentic about her, and authenticity is what creates real attraction. Another important detail is how this compliment shifts the interaction. When you point out the impact of her smile, you're giving her a reason to become more aware of it. That awareness often makes her smile more, not consciously, but naturally. And when that happens, the energy between you becomes lighter and more engaging. Now, here's where most men make a mistake. They either overuse this compliment or they deliver it with too much intensity. If you say it too often, it loses its value. If you say it in a way that feels exaggerated, it loses its authenticity. The key is to keep it simple and natural. Say it once at the right moment and let it sit. That's what gives it weight. When done correctly, this compliment doesn't just make her feel good in the moment. It changes how she experiences you, because now instead of being just another person she's talking to, you become someone who notices the things that actually matter. And that's what makes you stand out. The third compliment is where things start to move deeper, because now you're no longer talking about what she looks like or how she presents herself on the surface. You're speaking directly to who she is, and that's her authenticity. When you say something like, "I like how real you are," you don't try to fit in. You're doing something most people never do. You're acknowledging her identity, not her appearance. You're recognizing the way she carries herself, the way she expresses herself, and the fact that she doesn't feel the need to be someone else to gain approval. That hits differently because in today's world, most people are constantly adjusting how they present themselves. Social media, expectations, and pressure to fit in all create an environment where being real is actually rare. So when someone notices and appreciates that, it feels genuine. It feels personal, and that's what creates emotional impact. This type of compliment goes beyond attraction. It creates connection because you're telling her, without saying it directly, that she doesn't need to change anything to be accepted in your presence. That kind of message removes pressure. And when pressure is removed, she becomes more relaxed and more open. Now, here's why this works so well. When you compliment something that reflects who she is, it creates a stronger internal reaction. It's not something she can easily dismiss because it's tied to how she sees herself. And when someone feels seen at that level, it builds trust very quickly. Another important detail is that this kind of compliment feels rare. She may hear compliments about her looks often, but she doesn't hear people acknowledge her authenticity as frequently. That's what makes it memorable. But again, delivery matters. You don't want to say it in a way that feels scripted or overly serious. Keep it natural. Let it come out in conversation when it fits, and say it with a calm tone that shows you mean it. This is not about impressing her. It's about understanding her. And when a woman feels understood, she pays attention. Because very few people take the time to notice things at that level. And once you do, you're no longer just another interaction. You become someone who stands out in a way she can't easily explain. This is where you separate yourself from almost every other man she talks to, because now you're not focused on how she looks or even how she presents herself. You're focusing on how she thinks, and that's rare. Most men never get here. They stay on the surface commenting on appearance or obvious traits. But when you say something like, "I like the way you see things," it's different and it actually makes me think. You shift the entire dynamic of the interaction. Now you're not just talking to her, you're engaging with her. That difference matters more than most men realize, because when you acknowledge her perspective, you're telling her that her thoughts have value. You're not just listening to respond. You're actually paying attention to what she's saying and how she's saying it. And when someone feels heard at that level, it creates a much stronger connection. There's also a deeper layer to this. When a woman feels like she can express her thoughts freely without being judged or dismissed, she becomes more open. She shares more. She engages more, and the interaction becomes more meaningful. That openness is what allows attraction to grow naturally. Now, here's what makes this compliment powerful. It's not something she hears often. She may be used to people agreeing with her or reacting casually, but very few people take the time to notice the way she thinks and then express appreciation for it. When you do that, it stands out immediately. Another important detail is sincerity. You can't force this kind of compliment. It has to come from something real in the conversation. If you say it without actually paying attention, it will feel empty. But when it comes from a genuine moment, it carries weight. And that weight is what creates impact. You also want to keep your tone relaxed. Don't over-explain it. Don't turn it into a speech. Say it simply, then let the moment continue. That's what makes it feel natural. When done correctly, this compliment changes how she sees you. You're no longer just someone making conversation. You're someone who notices what others ignore. And that's what makes you different. Now, we move into two compliments that go even deeper because they focus on something most people feel but rarely recognize out loud: her energy and her thoughtfulness. These are not surface level traits. They are things that shape how people experience her. And when you notice them, it creates a strong emotional response. Let's start with her energy. When you say something like, "I like your energy," it makes being around you feel different. You're not just giving a compliment, you're describing how her presence affects you. That's powerful because it shifts the focus from what she is to what she creates around her. Some people bring calm, some bring excitement, some bring warmth. When you recognize that, you're showing awareness at a deeper level. You're not just reacting to what you see, you're responding to what you feel in her presence. And that's rare. Now, here's why this works. Energy is something people don't always see in themselves clearly, but they feel it. So, when you reflect that back to her in a genuine way, it creates a moment of recognition. She becomes more aware of how she impacts you, and that awareness strengthens the connection. Now, let's talk about thoughtfulness. When you say, "You're one of the most thoughtful people I've met," it shows in the way you do things. You're acknowledging something even deeper. You're recognizing her character. In a world where most interactions are quick and surface level, genuine thoughtfulness stands out. It shows effort, care, and attention to others. When you notice that, you're telling her that you see the effort she puts into how she treats people, and that matters because most people don't get recognized for that. This type of compliment makes her feel understood, not just appreciated. Now, here's the key to both of these. You have to mean them. These are not lines you throw out randomly. They need to come from real observations in the moment. When they do, they land naturally and create a strong emotional impact. When you combine these two compliments, you're no longer talking about how she looks or what she says. You're talking about how she affects the world around her. And that's what makes it memorable, because now you're not just someone who noticed her, you're someone who felt her presence. Now we move into the final two compliments, and these are the ones that create the deepest level of attraction because they connect to who she is becoming and how she makes others feel. Let's start with her drive. When you say something like, "I admire how driven you are," the way you stay focused on what you want is inspiring. You're doing something most people don't do. You're not just noticing her in the present, you're recognizing her direction. That's powerful because ambition and purpose are things people take seriously. They require discipline, consistency, and effort. When you acknowledge that, you're showing that you value more than just attraction. You value her mindset, her goals, and the way she approaches life. And that creates a different kind of connection. It tells her that you see potential, not just appearance. That kind of recognition builds respect. And respect is one of the strongest foundations for long-term attraction. Now, let's talk about the final compliment, her presence. When you say something like, "You have a way of making people feel comfortable, like they actually matter when they're around you," you're pointing out something very few people are aware of in themselves. You're recognizing her ability to create emotional safety. That's rare. Most people focus on themselves during interactions. But someone who makes others feel seen, heard, and valued stands out immediately. When you notice that, you're acknowledging her emotional intelligence and her ability to connect. And that hits deep because now you're not just describing what she does, you're describing how she affects people. That kind of compliment creates a strong internal response because it reflects something meaningful back to her. It shows that you're paying attention on a level most people don't reach. Now, here's what makes these two compliments so effective. They are future-focused and emotionally grounded at the same time. You're recognizing who she is now and who she is becoming. And when a woman feels seen at that level, she doesn't forget it. These are the kinds of words that stay with her. Not because they sound good, but because they feel real. And when something feels real, it creates a connection that goes beyond the moment. At this point, you've seen all 8 compliments. But if you only focus on the words themselves, you'll miss the most important part. Because this was never just about what to say. It was about how you think when you speak. Most men believe attraction comes from saying the right lines. They try to memorize phrases, repeat what they've heard, and hope it works. But that approach always falls short because it removes the one thing that actually creates impact: authenticity. A compliment only works when it feels real, not rehearsed, not forced, not said just to get a reaction. When your words come from genuine observation, they land differently. They carry weight because they reflect something true about her, not something you're trying to manufacture. That's what makes the difference. Another thing you need to understand is timing. Even the best compliment can lose its impact if it's said at the wrong moment. You don't interrupt the flow of a conversation just to say something impressive. You wait for the right moment when it feels natural, when it fits already happening between you. That's what gives your words power. And then there's delivery. You don't need to say it loudly. You don't need to over-explain. You don't need to repeat it. Say it once, calmly, and let it sit. That silence after a well-placed compliment often says more than anything else because it gives her space to feel it. Now here's the bigger picture. A woman might not remember the exact words you used, but she will remember how you made her feel. That feeling is what stays. That's what separates you from every other man who said something similar but didn't create any real impact. So, instead of trying to say more, focus on saying less with more intention. Pay attention, observe, speak when it matters, and mean what you say. Because when you do that, you don't just have conversations. You create moments. And those moments are what make you unforgettable. Now, I want to hear from you. Which of these compliments do you think would hit the hardest? Drop your answer in the comments. I read them and I respond to as many as I can. And if this changed how you see attraction, make sure you subscribe because in the next video, I'm going to show you something that takes this even further. Not just what to say, but how to know exactly when to say it. And that's where most men get it.